series we'll build each kit from the Fantasy Village set by Battlesystems, discussing any construction pitfalls and build mistakes, as well as kit-specific build tips and possible conversions. Once everything is built, we'll test a variety of methods to colour the edges of the terrain, and then finally conclude with an in-depth overall review video of the whole fantasy terrain set. Follow along and consider subscribing if that sounds like something you don't want to miss. If you haven't already, I recommend watching my introductory video to this series, where I cover a few really key tips that will be relevant to this build and the others. Okay, so in this video we're just going to tackle a few of the miscellaneous items, the scattered terrain if you like, or bits and bobs that can clip onto various different buildings. I'm not a massive gamer in terms of wanting the inside of the houses decked out with bookcases and chairs and all that kind of stuff, so I'm not going to cover those because I'm not going to build them up straight away for my gaming. So but what I am going to cover is things that will have sort of like more of an impact on the gaming table from a battle game perspective rather than role playing. So I'm going to build some crates from the thatched cottage sprue, the bench, and some barrels from the marketplace sprue. Their barrels are all over the place on other sprues as well. From the blacksmith's forge, we're going to do the exterior storage, and we put together a chair outside the blacksmith's forge. And then here's the actual Fantasy Village furniture. So, you know, I might just do some chests, that kind of thing. So I might want to put them in the back of the carts that we've already built. So I've already attempted to build one barrel. Totally failed using my Gorilla Glue gel. That might be because that bottle's quite old. So I used PVA instead and had to sort of peg it, hold it in place. Obviously the fairly tacky PVA does take a while to dry. So I'm going to use a newer pot of super glue, and we'll see if we can get it done with super glue, because I just want to be able to do them quite quick. So let's start with a barrel, and I need some nails when you're doing these. So you have got to be a little bit careful, because I found this with some of these smaller cuts on these smaller items. If you're not careful and you're bending it around, you can split down basically the grey board, the box board in the middle, and then the printer surface will start coming off. So I'll just show you where that's almost happened on this one. You can see, I turn that around just there. Printed surface could quite easily have popped off if I didn't notice that it was happening, basically. So the other thing to mention is these aren't perfectly round. Actually, that's not true. They are quite round. The artwork's a little bit off center, which is fine. And then you've got these little tabs for where you pop them out of the sheets. So they're not perfectly round because of the tabs, and that's the one thing that probably is going to cause some issues when you're trying to glue these round. And they mentioned this in the actual video from Battlesystems. So I do like the way they were trying to actually build these though, which is to pop a little bit of glue down like that, get them in place, and then wrap it around and glue the rest of it. So let's see if that actually works. Let's see how many times they had to try that in their video to make it work. Just a bit of super glue on there. And try and make sure that's parallel with the bottom of the barrel. Holding it in a little bit from the edge, because that's what barrels look like. So a definite benefit of using super glue over PVA is that that'll be set in a minute, so let's give that a few seconds. Okay, so we'll put some glue all the way around the rim of the barrel tops. And I think we'll pop a little bit on each end, or maybe one of the ends, pop a bit on the end away from my thumb. See if I can get this stuck to my fingers now then. So I'm going to kind of work it around and okay, that's That's not working very well. So let's sort of shifty it around a little bit as we're doing it. Oh, okay, yeah, the lid's popped in. Okay, not ideal. The lid's come off. Yeah, that lid's just gonna have to sit as it is. Let's just see what we get. Let's hold it in place and just see how that works. I mean, you could pop an elastic band around it, or maybe like maybe a peg if it's got enough. No, those don't work. Something like this maybe. Oh yeah, that actually worked quite well. You can see that's a total fail on the inside there. Okay, let's leave that for now. Just wondering whether to try a different technique of gluing the barrel right around. I just don't think that's going to work. Okay, so this time I'm sort of over-rolling the barrel to see if maybe that'll help when it comes to actually wrapping it around, if it's already been put into place with a tighter curve on it. That might sort of help it go around at the end. So I will just basically try doing the same technique again, but I think what I'm going to do is put glue a bit further around the bottom of the rim here. I think the issue with these pieces is that the circle lids, as the dies cut through the card, doesn't go down perfectly straight through. You get a little bit of almost like a slightly beveled edge on these, so they don't sit up that well on there. They're sort of leaning in and out a little bit, partly because, like I said, where the dies it's cut through, it's like gone in at a very slight angle. But anyway, let's glue around the edge and we'll just sort of see if we can get a better result this time. A bit more liberal with the glue there, so maybe have one of these to hand ready. I think probably the strategy is don't worry about the gap at the end. There's plenty of scatter terrain that you could just chuck in there, or maybe when you're using the barrels on the battlefield, just have that facing away from you, maybe against a wall or something. Because I think the lid popping in on that one was because I was trying to force this round to meet. So hold that on there for a bit while we build something else, and then we'll come back and have a look. So I think we'll just talk about that quickly. I think this is one of the downsides of this terrain, the smaller pieces. These smaller pieces weren't the thing that grabbed my attention when I bought into this Kickstarter, and they wouldn't be the kind of thing that would grab my attention personally when I want to buy it. I like the big buildings, I like the fences, the bridges, the bigger pieces of terrain. I think these smaller pieces are fantastic that you get them basically for free on the sheets, and you can get a reasonable result with them, and they will look good when they're all on the table and you're not looking too closely at them. But I would never buy this kind of terrain set just for these small pieces. I think you could get some small resin pieces, or even sort of MDF, probably mainly resin pieces though, for things like this that you can paint up really quickly with just a dry brush and a wash. You know, like I said, they're free, so they're okay, but these are not as good, in my opinion, as the buildings. Let's try a couple of pieces though that don't need gluing, because I think they're going to be better. So we got crates. Let's build a crate. Straight away, I think this is going to be better because it doesn't need glue on it. It should slot together quite well, being square. Look at the, okay, I'm just going to show you that because that's another example where the tooling's a little bit off. Now, one of those grooves is humongous and one of them is tiny. So that tiny one definitely needs cutting out a little bit. You know, I'm not pointing that out as a major criticism. It obviously is a criticism to a degree, but I've come at this terrain expecting those kind of slight issues. Okay, yeah, that is correct. It didn't look quite right. So I didn't cut that piece that I just cut enough, and this is what happens if you don't do that. You end up basically bending and sort of forcing these pieces out. So it still looks okay, but if you notice a bit is too narrow, you know, when you widen it, just make sure you widen it enough, otherwise it basically wasn't worth me trying to widen that, so I've still damaged it as I put it in. That's really my error of not widening it enough. I said there's no glue on these, but there is, I forgot. So this is quite cool. You've got a base, which will fit in there. I'll just pop a little bit of glue. Just sort of on the edge there. Pop that in there. Tiny bits of super glue on there. That should stay in there fine now. Now this one's interesting. So this is the lid. Now, you should be able to glue that in the middle. In fact, I am literally just going to glue that in the middle rather than trying anything fancy, because the lid will still fit on. Just how square I glue this will depend on how square the lid sits on top of the crate. It's not bad, that'll do. Let that dry. Well, let's try it drying. Let's have a look at these barrels again. Okay, so that's dry now. Big gap there. If you're really bothered by it, there's a step off a ladder. Glue that over the top there. But let's do that. I know that's not perfect, but then I don't think a small piece of terrain like this is a perfect piece of terrain to be building using this kind of terrain technique. To me, that's fine. That one's a bit of a nightmare, but you know, that can go maybe in one of the ruined houses as a broken barrel. There we go, totally fine. Almost like I planned it. And that's, you know, like I said, it doesn't look perfect, but that's fine. It'll be okay. It'll look all right. You pop it in the back of the cart. Hide that bit in the corner. Broken barrel there. Oh, looks okay to me. Have a quick look at this. That should clip in there nicely now, which it does. So it's a little bit of a rickety chest, but that does actually work quite well. So there's loads of these scattered all over the sprues, so could definitely use these as like a treasure hunting type mission. So, you know, hide some treasure in one of them at a random place on the board. Nice little fun element of popping the chest open to see what's in there. Have a quick look at this exterior storage, because I think these are the extra little finishing touches that we'll have on buildings that will reduce that boxy nature of the ground floor of some of the buildings. Anyway, while we're at it, let's just pop out this chair, because that'll be nice and easy to do. Now, I know I mentioned I don't really want to furnish the insides of my buildings too much, but I'm actually quite happy to have some of these outside, or maybe there could be a ruined chair on the part of the ruined village. Doesn't get more simple than that, but you know, that actually looks good. You know, I'd say. Okay, so there's a cut there and there. Okay, so this is one of those ones that's going to clip inside a building. Okay, right, I remember how to do this. So you've got the lid of the chest, which will go here. I say chest, it's a storage piece for the side of a building. Then that fits in there, which will be like a countertop inside the building. Or the other way around, depending on which way you put it on your building. So I'm rushing there, that's not very good. I pushed that and started tearing it there. Now, I've not done that on many of these pieces. That's just a reminder to be careful. If you've watched all these videos, you know that I've been reminding you guys and myself to be careful as I've been going all the way through, and I still have been careful, but not careful enough. So that's either an indication that these are maybe a bit more delicate than I'm thinking, or more like they take longer than I was expecting, and so I'm kind of rushing, but that's fine, that's okay now, I haven't broken it. Let's grab a building and just see what it looks like. That's what we get at the end. Looks pretty good. Breaks up the boxy nature of the building, in my opinion. I really like that. Definitely worth adding on. One thing to mention is don't glue the floors on before you've put any of these pieces that you want in place on. And if you think you're going to want to change these, don't glue the floors in. I'm going to say I don't think these are the main reason why you'd buy this set. It's great that they come for free on the sheets. It definitely adds something to the set as a whole, especially if you're playing like role-playing games where you can interact with these items, or maybe if you just like going into buildings and seeing them being more realistic, then these are definitely a worthy addition, especially things like this that can be used for like game mechanics in the game. I just think that the small pieces don't show off this this like construction technique as well as the big buildings. You know, I'm not going to say too much about that now because I'm going to do a final review of my final thoughts once everything's built up and on the table and played with a little bit. But my feeling about these is great that you get them. They're pretty good. I wouldn't buy the set just for these. Give me some comments below if you feel differently about that. And I'd be particularly interested to see if you've built up all the interiors and you've got a really sweet setup, maybe especially if it's sort of, you've got like some nice narrative photos of your models, you know, in the setup with all this interior stuff like the beds and the bookcases and whatnot. If you've got that on Instagram or somewhere like that, stick a mention in the comments and, you know, I'd be really keen to go and have a look at that. In the next video, we're going to test a few different methods for colouring the edges of the terrain, and you'll be able to decide whether or not you think that's something that you want to do with your Battlesystems terrain.